My name's Samuel Kirk-Reeve. I'm here today this afternoon with James Shaw, co-leader of the Green Party. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
So first question, you are committed to seeing New Zealand lead the world in transitioning to a high-value, clean tech, post-carbon economy that works for everyone. What will that look like?
Well, so I think that the areas where, if you look at our highest emissions, which are agriculture, transport and energy, those are also the three areas where there's a huge industrial, like the new industrial revolution taking place. And if we can work out, for example, how to do sustainable agriculture, which is net zero emission, then that itself becomes an export, the export of intellectual property for other countries, because other countries have cows too, and are up against the same problem that we've got.
And so what does New Zealand have to do through both private and public sector initiatives to facilitate this transition, and where do you see your role?
Well, I started in the private sector, right? So I was doing a lot of work with companies on some really innovative things to make them more sustainable, but that wasn't adding up to the scale of the challenge that we need. So there are some things that will only happen as a result of change in the political sphere, whether that's in the form of tax incentives, regulation and so on. And so I sort of see the public and private sectors as working together to sort of say, well, how are we going to solve this problem?
Your portfolio consists of climate change and economic development. Is there some tension between these two areas for you as a leader, given you're focused on a post-carbon economy?
Having climate change and economic development was a really deliberate choice, because in fact I see those as two sides of the same coin. It's the same reason that Eugenie Sage, my colleague, has both primary industries and environment, because our primary industries take place in the environment, and many of our environmental problems are a function of our primary industries. So if you think about what are the things that it's going to take for us to get to a low carbon economy, that is actually an economic development question.
So what lessons have you learned from managing the finance portfolio?
It's a great portfolio. It's pretty dry, as you might anticipate. The thing that we grapple with the most, or we've been grappling with the most in the time that I've had the portfolio, has actually been on changes to the tax system. And the legislation around tax is incredibly complicated. And it's one of those things that I think there's an element of risk, is that do the people who are helping to make the law, people like me in Parliament, do we actually really understand the implications of the legislation that comes before us? So it is very, very complex, quite fascinating.
What makes working in the public sector challenging?
Well, I just want to distinguish between Parliament and the public sector. Like I said, I've worked in the private sector and now I'm in Parliament. And Parliament just doesn't function like any other sector anywhere, right? It doesn't look anything like the private sector, doesn't look anything like most other public institutions, doesn't look anything like the NGO world either. It is a very strange beast. And as someone who spent a lot of time in organisational design, I often question, is the design of our parliamentary system actually set up to achieve good quality decisions for the country? Because I'm not entirely sure it is.
How has your master's degree in sustainable development and business leadership prepared you for the responsibilities you now have in government?
Look, that master's degree that I did at Bath University was incredibly useful, because a lot of it was built around saying, well, how do you create change, actually? If you're trying to create a business that's more sustainable, take over a large business that's maybe got a 100-year legacy and kind of shift it so that it becomes more sustainable. The things that you need to do there are similar to the things that you need to do in government to say, well, what are the things that we need to do to create a sustainable economy? And so it taught me a lot about how do you lead and create change. And a lot of that is patience and playing the long game.
What should students be doing to enhance their skill set for employment outside of achieving good grades?
So I think, grades are obviously a part of it, right? But actually, as someone who employs a reasonable number of people, I'm looking for a whole lot of other skills as well, right? And a lot of that is to do with your temperament, your ability to fit in with a team, kind of working skills, creativity, and the ability to kind of be imaginative about where you go with your work.
What skills will be critical for future workers over the next 10 years?
I think the key skill is being able to learn new skills, right? I'm kind of obsessed with robotics and artificial intelligence and automation. And, if you look at, for example, in the United States over the last 30 years, 85% of all jobs lost have not been through trade negotiations or anything like that, but through automation. And that pace is only picking up. So I think that that's a big challenge that we've got, and it means that people are going to be having to retrain and move into new industries all the time.
How can New Zealand continue to innovate and grow new export markets?
Well, I was saying before that the three biggest emission sectors for us are agriculture, energy and transport. If we work out the solutions to those things, those will be incredibly valuable in terms of our export markets, right? So we'll be producing higher value goods and services, but also the intellectual property that goes with how do you shift that economy, which is a challenge the entire world is facing. So I think if we focus on that, if you think about innovation as often a function of constraints, you say, well, the constraint being how to have a low emission economy or a net zero carbon economy at the same time as increased productivity and lift wages, then that is where you're going to get true innovation.
And finally, what has been the highlight of your career to date?
This is the highlight of my career to date. I mean, I have to say I have the best job in the world. I've had some great jobs in my career, without doubt. The one that I've got now is the best one so far.
Thank you very much, James, for taking the time this afternoon to answer those questions. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.